Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This Saturday, we head up north to Montreal, Quebec, Canada. 2 title fights up for grabs, women's flyweight and men's welterweight as well. Again, 12 total fights for us to go through. Transparency as always, man. Almost an 8-unit night between the two of us. Majority of that from you, but still extremely happy with my night, man. I kicked off my first bet with 2 units on Quang Lee at plus 125. Good dog hit, but man, I'm kind of like kicking myself because I knew the grappling path was there, and I completely missed out on a submission prop sitting at like plus 800 and things. So hard to get greedy, taking a big shot on the dog, my biggest play of the card being on the dog. But I proceed to miss my next 3 bets and give it all back with the Cameron Smotherman money line, Jeremy Stevens and Mason Jones not seeing the distance, and then Misha Tate really not deciding to try to get her game going until round 3. So just like the week previously, going into my last spot on the card, I'm down, and luckily, D-Rod comes through us with a TKO in round 3 at plus 470, finished with plus 1.85 units, like a 34% ROI. So, a couple winning events in a row for me now. Looking to keep the ball rolling this week, and incredible night from yourself, man. I know it was reverse sweep last week, now clean sweep this week. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely needed it to come back with a good card, and it worked. You put me on the Rodriguez by TKO at plus 470. That was a great way to end the night for me with 2.35 units in return. I was also on the fight doesn't go the distance at plus 172 in the Rodriguez versus Jillian Robertson fight. We knew, if the fight got to the ground, Jillian had a huge advantage, and she is super dominant when she gets into those positions. And had it stayed on the feet, I think that Rodriguez had a clear path to victory on the feet as well. So when the line jumped up 22 points from when we were talking about hitting it on the podcast, I was forced to put at least 1 unit on it. And then I had Montel Jackson and Azamat Bokayev. We kind of talked about it. Both of them were a little bit of a sweat. I thought Bokayev, if he didn't get that finish over Loader, might have blown his gas tank. And then Jackson, I gave him the win, but it was definitely a lot sketchier than I had anticipated. I had 2 units on that, minus 113, and ended up returning 5.83 units, 167% ROI. We take that, man. Yeah. I got to take that because, like you said, last week was a little bit of a heartbreaker for sure. Or the week before that was a little bit
another undefeated fighter in Daniel Marcos losing the O last week, and again by decision, following your
honestly, it should have been a spot that we tried to capitalize on, and we didn't,
especially this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the first fight of the night, we have Brad Katona taking on Beksat Almakan in the bantamweight division. Man, honestly, you kind of talked me off of placing a bet on Beksat Almakan, and after I've thought about it a little bit more, I'm actually happy that you did. He's coming in here at minus 180, and truth be told, I just remember his debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, dropped him in the first round, but then he did proceed to just get mollywopped for the remainder of the fight. It is something. It is one of those spots where I feel like because he put on at least somewhat of a decent performance against Umar early, he's now coming, into this fight with a huge step down in competition against Brad Katona, and the odds makers think that he's going to, put on a show here, that he finally gets the opportunity to showcase his skills, not against a title challenger in Umar Nurmagomedov. But the performance from Cameron Smotherman last week is kind of enough to keep me off. Cameron Smotherman in his debut against Jake Hadley, he put on a really good performance, kind of like overperformed, if anything. And then he's got a really good line against Sergey City, and, didn't look like he deserved it at all. I feel like we are in a similar position here with Beksat Almakan, where it's just a line over correction. And truth be told, we haven't seen enough from him yet to get a feel for how he's actually going to look against UFC caliber fighters. And if anything, Brad Katona is UFC caliber, second stint in the UFC. He's, never really putting on just a complete dominant performance, but he wins the fights he's supposed to. And even the fights that he's losing, he's not losing them by huge margins, Right. So I do think that this is a layoff spot for me. I still lean Beksat Almakan. I'm just not sure that we have enough information to bet him at minus 180 here. So layoff spot, but Beksat's the pick.
Yeah. So we're going to start off in a bit of a disagreement. I do 1.5 unit shot tracked on Katona plus 150 to kick off the night. One of the easier clicks for me, man. You kind of touched on it. It's what has Almacan done to deserve almost a 2-1 favorite over Katona here, and the only thing that you can even reference is the glancing shot over Umar that sets him down early in a fight, and then he proceeds to get out grappled for the next 13 minutes. And even on the regional scene, it's very, very low level, man. There's nothing here that's shown me that he should go out here and be a 2-1 favorite over a guy and Brad Katona, who's 8 fights deep into his UFC career, has worked his way back to the UFC, 2 stints on Tough in his backyard, never finished. I get it. Katona's in some stinkers. The guy is not durable, but he's going to make the fight close. And Almacan, to me, like, I don't know. The max he could look is maybe minus 180. Like, I don't see how there's any value on his line, whereas Katona really could come out here and look a favorite or at least make it a pick 'em. So I feel like all the value is on Katona, and hoping to catch a dog shot early on in the card. Moving on up to 145. What is it? Daniel Santos versus Ji-Young Lee. Man, I hate that I missed the plus money on Ji-Young Lee because he is the natural featherweight here, man. I think he hits harder. I think he's a much more athletic guy, the faster guy. I think he's got a lot more that I can trust on the feet. And with Daniel Santos, he's a guy who's going to come forward. He's going to get hit. His defensive tendencies aren't very good. And truth be told, he's a bantamweight moving up. He's not the one on full camp here who had a fight scheduled on Saturday. And, looking through his Tapology page, dude's got more missed fights and pullouts than he actually does fights in the UFC. And so at the end of the day, it's a lot easier for me to trust the Lee side, being the full camp, the natural featherweight, and everything else I previously mentioned. So I've missed the plus money at like plus 150 where it opened up, and now you got to lay a little bit of chalk. So it's going to be an easy pass for me, but I'm on the Ji-Young Lee side, man.
Another disagreement here, but not with a lot of conviction. Ji-Young Lee, he's never been somebody that I had much faith in. I think he lost I personally think he should have lost his debut against Yi Zha. He ended up winning a split decision there. I know I tried to bet against him with Blake Bilder in his next fight. Bilder just kind of shit the bed in that fight, in my opinion. And then Haider Emil really goes out there, showcases that he can take a little bit better hit than Ji-Young Lee. And truth be told, outside of the size advantage, I'm not seeing too much that he has over Daniel Santos. If the fight hits the mat, I got to lean the Santos side. And even though he did come into the UFC dropping the loss to Julio Arce, the way he's bounced back in his next 2 against John Castaneda and Johnny Munoz Jr., it's impressive to say the least. And those are 2 pretty decent fighters and at least more proven, in my opinion, than Ji-Young Lee here. Other than size-wise, I have to lean Daniel Santos. I think that the only way that I could see him get in some trouble is similarly to Blake Bilder, where Blake just had difficulty getting inside the length of Ji-Young Lee. But if he is able to close that distance, I think I like his durability a little bit better. I like it if the fight hits the mat, and I think that he can match the power as long as he can get inside that range. So this is a spot where I definitely lean Daniel Santos here. And if the line continues to climb and we see Ji-Young Lee become a minus 150 or better, you could probably find me having a unit on Daniel Santos here, but it's ultimately at this point a pass. I do lean Santos right now, though.
Yeah.
Moving up to the middleweight division, we have Marc-Andre Barriault versus Bruno Silva. I think the biggest question here is, where is Barriault's chin right now? I think if you could guarantee that he gets past the first round of Bruno Silva, that he would be an excellent bet, especially at this price tag. But I'm not really interested in laying juice on Barriault here for the most part. The majority of his wins come by decision. He needs a full 15 minutes to put something together. And at this point in his career, I just don't feel like trusting him. He is in front of his fans. And like I said, if he can avoid that knockout, we've seen Silva kind of drop off a ledge if he doesn't find the finish early. And I think that he could certainly exploit that in this position, but it is just not the, fighter archetype that I want to bet on here at favorite odds. So pass for me. I do think Barriault gets it done. I just don't want to trust him.
See the fight, pretty damn close, man. It's, combined 7-fight losing streak between the two guys, or kind of just picking who's the more shot guy here, but to me, the questions are what you said. It's Barry Alt's chin. The guy's been finished in like 4 of his last 5 losses, back-to-back TKO losses. And so a guy who is known historically to be very durable, be able to walk through those shots and get his grindy pace going. You don't really know if he can do that anymore. And if one thing Bruno Silva still has, it's a bit of power. But this guy, I think, is clearly shot. Maybe it's Alex Pereira fight that took a lot out of him, but he's clearly not the same fighter as he was when he first came to the UFC. He looks slow, very plodding. We see lifelong grapplers like Gerald Meerschaert, Chris Weidman outstriking this guy who's like 20-0 to the career knockout. So I just feel like we've absolutely seen clear decline, and I'm with you. If the fight gets out of round 1, and Barriott's still there, I really do think the pace will start to get to Silva. So I'm on the Barriott side as well. Just really not interested in laying chalk either, man. Moving up to Sterling, to Navajo Sterling versus Ivan Erslan. I was telling you, there's been moments when I was watching back Sterling this week that I'm like, I just don't know if he's as good as some people think he is, or the market's making him out to be. He looks like a physical specimen. He's Izzy's guy, and I kind of think that's baked into the line a little bit, because there has been moments where I kind of question how good, or how what his ceiling really is. But I think that can be equated to him only having like 6 fights. He's still super young into his career, and I do think I told you this. If I'm going to look to ever fade him, I think it's going to be with a guy who's going to push a dominating grappling pace. Do I think Erslan might land some takedowns? Do I think that would be his best path to victory in this fight? I do, but I don't think Erslan's the one that's going to put that game plan together enough to beat Navajo Sterling here. The more I look at it, I think Navajo's actually going to get him out of there in the first or second round. So I like Sterling. I like Sterling TKO. Looks like an absolute freaking science project on his Instagram right now. Looks in incredible shape. And, early on in these guys' careers, the UFC does a good job of matching them up, and so I kind of think they know what they're doing here. I like Sterling inside the distance.
Yeah, with only six fights total, I think his last fight was certainly a great learning experience. I think a lot of people are down on him because he couldn't find that finish. But for what it's worth, I think he won all 3 rounds against Tokos. And
right.
Even though he faced adversity, it was nice seeing that he could still find a path to winning that fight. And, like you said, you touched on it. He's 27 years old, just had the most experience, the best fight that he could at that point in his career. And the UFC is kind of doing him a favor, matching him up against Ivan here. I think as long as that he can avoid that first round knockout power, which I do think he has that capability, he should start to take over late. And I tend to agree with you that he should get the job done here on Saturday night. It's really tough trusting him at this price tag, knowing that he is still somewhat green. And unless he gets the finish, he's not going to really cover minus 300 or better. So, tempted to put him in a parlay with somebody coming up here, but might take some convincing for sure. He is the side for me, but that's how I feel about it. Staying in the same weight class, the light heavyweight division, we have Modestas Bukauskas taking on Ion Cutelaba. I think we disagree here as well. I like Modestas Bukauskas since his return into the UFC. I think he's been training with Tom Aspinall, and I think that that's a great training partner to have when you're fighting somebody in Ion Cutelaba, who is more and more leaning on his wrestling to get fights done. I think he's looked good, man. I think he has a little bit cleaner striking, and if he can avoid the power of Cutelaba early and then get to his feet if he does get taken down, I think that he could slowly pick apart Ion Cutelaba, who, I think it's fair to say he's had a little bit of a roller coaster UFC career. And on top of all that, Modestas is only 31 years old. I do think that he's finally found that stride in his career where he can start putting something together. Ion is also 31 years old, but I do think that we've seen the full potential of him since he's come into the UFC. And I just tend to trust somebody in Modestas who I think can put together a cleaner 15 minutes at this point in his career than Ion Cutelaba. Give me Modestas Bukauskas. It's even money, so I'm not really trying to get involved here. But, if the line flips a little more, I could get plus money on Modestas, I would consider it. But I'm honestly perfectly fine with laying off this fight.
Yeah, just right now, 1.05 units on Kutelaba at -105. I'm kind of in the same boat. If it gets to plus money, I'm kind of tempted to go back to the well with a little more on the Kutelaba side here. I think Kutelaba wins round one 80% of the time here, man. So if I'm going to hedge out of my bet, I think I'm going to get a pretty good spot after round one to be able to get in on Bukowskis if I feel like it. All the grappling upsides on the Kutelaba side here. I think majority of the finishing upside is on Kutelaba here. You know, Bukowskis is a guy who's been finishing, I think, like 5 of his 6 losses, a bunch of TKOs. I don't trust the durability of the guy. And what's his best path to victory? You know, probably pot shotting on the outside like he always does. And I still think he loses round one. And so what does he really look? -125, -130 if he wins the next 2 rounds after dropping a big round one, where I think Kutelaba could finish in round one, could have dominant grappling upside. Kutelaba's the one to me that could come out here and the line could just be way off and him be the big favorite. So on the Kutelaba side, and honestly, man, I hate that you're on the other side because that's one I do kind of feel good about. So I'm excited for Saturday, man. Moving on up the card, Jessica Andrade, Jasmine Jasudavicius here. This is another one. I think the winner is going to look like a big favorite. I think Andrade probably catches her on the feet, is probably one of the first ones to really hurt and maybe put Jasmine down. But that's not really the way I see it going. I think Jasmine's going to get on top, find her takedowns. I think they come pretty damn easily here. Andrade struggles with girls who are bigger, stronger than her. Blanchfield, Suarez, you know, when these girls at 125 want to get their hands on Jessica and put her to the ground, they typically do. And man, ever since the last couple fights, Jasmine has, when she gets to top, she really likes to punish. She likes to crucifix position. Jasmine Jasudavicius, there's plus 600 and greater lines on the TKO. And I think it could look like Jillian. I think if she gets on top, I think we could see nasty elbows splitting the guard and things. And I think she's going to get on top and finish Jessica with strikes. And so I wish this was a girl under that we could get a good plus money violence under, but it's not. They know violence is probably coming here. So in a fight that's like even money to not see the distance, I like Jasmine to get on top and get a TKO at plus 600. So I think I'm on the Jasmine side 100%. And if I could get down something, plus 600 or better TKO is pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't hate that way of attacking this fight. Jasmine's actually the person that I would like to put the parlay with Navajo Sterling. I think she absolutely dominates here for all the reasons you mentioned. I think physicality is the biggest one, though. You know, this is a now or never fight for Jasmine Jasudavicius. I would say hang it up if she can't get past Jessica Andrade. But being where we are in Canada, I think the UFC is doing her a favor here. What better way to catapult somebody's career than getting a win over an ex-title holder and Jessica Andrade? And we've seen it time and time again.
Right. She's a stepping stone for everybody.
What was that? Oh, yeah, been a stepping stone for everybody. Yeah. She's on a 4-fight win streak right now, and this would certainly be her best win to date. But, man, I think that this is a perfect stylistic matchup for her. And barring a KO from Jessica Andrade, where she, you know, kind of, I don't know. I just don't see it happening, man. I'm not gonna avoid betting Jasmine where I see her having such a big advantage to something that could happen, but we haven't really seen in a while. And it's a girl's KO that I'm avoiding. I think that I'm comfortable doing that. So yeah, I think this is a great spot for Jasmine. It's just a little unfortunate that it's a women's fight. Neither one of them have, Jasmine at least hasn't ever faced this level of competition. But for what it's worth, it's not bottom of the barrel women's. You know, these are 2 high-level fighters here, and we see a clear advantage. So I'm on the Jasmine side all the way. Might find her in a parlay for me later on in the week. Moving up to the prelim headliner with in the welterweight division, Mike Mallet taking on Charles Radke. Man, you know, at first when I saw this line at like -250 for Mallet, I was a little, you know, hesitant. I think that he's proven a couple times that he doesn't deserve that price tag, especially if the fight goes past the first 5 minutes. But I'm not convinced that Charles Radke is, you know, going to be the guy to fraud check him again. As the lines continue to drop, we've seen Mallet at like -170 now. And I honestly think he could cover that and a lot more, especially with his win conditions. I look at Charles Radke, and I don't think that he's a great, nail either. People are dogging on Mike Malott because he's, not able to take a punch very well. I kind of think the same could be said for Charles Radke. We saw him in the Prates loss where he got the knee to the body. It's hard to blame him too much for that, but it's like the level of competition that he's beating him and the way that they're beating him, it's really hard to take too much from it. Matthew Semmelsberger in under a minute, Gilbert Urbina, who I don't think he's in the UFC anymore, in the first round, and then Blood Diamond, which we know that he is not in the UFC anymore. I think that Mike Malott's just a little bit step up, and we're kind of discrediting how good he was leading up to this because of the Neil Magny loss. It's understandable just to lay off of this fight, though, because in his last fight against Trevin Giles, he's a little bit gun shy, but I think that's kind of expected coming off of your first loss. So this time, first loss in the UFC.
Right.
I think that this next time out, he will be able to put together a much better performance and have his confidence back in his home country. I think that this is kind of his to lose right here. So give me Mike Malott. If the line gets to minus 150, I think I'd be comfortable playing him, but it's a pass for me right now.
Yeah, I know Chuck Buffalo's wanting someone to pay for Canada booing the national anthem on Saturday. So I'm kind of cheering for Chuck Buffalo, honestly, just because I think he's a more exciting fighter of the two. And if he's getting the finish, I think it's a highlight reel KO. I think he gets on the inside and boxes up Malott and gets the finish. But at range, Malott's pretty good, man. Malott uses a lot of kicks. He knows how to keep that range. I feel like he's a lot more versatile of a striker, and he definitely is a better grappler of the two. Very slick submissions, good guillotine. Yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like Mike Malott could bank grappling top time here. He could just pot shot with kicks and things on the outside, and it's going to be up to Chuck Buffalo to close the distance and really make this a dogfight. And if he's not willing to do that, I don't really fancy his chances of winning. So I understood people taking a shot on him above like plus 200 and things, but as the lines come down, I'm just nowhere near as eager to. I think I'll side with you on the Malott side. Not a fight I'm too eager about, though. One excited to watch, not bet. Kicking off the main card, man. Benoit Saint Denis staying on the card, taking on Canadian, guy coming back to the UFC, and Kyle Propolek. You and I both lost our spot on BSD at like plus 145 against Joel Alvarez, probably going to add to that. I think BSD's style just breaks guys, man. The guy's a marauder. He's durable. He's willing to come forward. His relentless grappling really breaks guys. And I think that's what was going to happen to Joel Alvarez, and I think that's what's going to happen to Kyle Propolek stepping up on short notice here. It might not be a first-round finish. Kyle might be able to defend off some of the grappling and things, but ultimately I think the pace, the pressure will get to him. We'll see BSD get the back and get the rear naked choke probably in the second round.
Yeah, so while you were talking about that, I was trying to find a line on the BSD, which even BetOnline doesn't have anything out. The over-under said it. I think they said a half round when it first came out, but it's looking like it's evened out at 1.5 rounds, and you can get minus 175. That's probably the path, but even more so, I think if you wanted to play BSD, you're looking for him by submission. Propolek has never been knocked out, and I do think that he would give up the submission to a much better grappler in Benoit Saint Denis. To be honest, though, I didn't put too much effort into breaking down this fight. It's a minus 1,200. What can you say about it,
Right.
But if the line's playable, if the submission prop is playable, I think that's the only way that you could really look at hitting this. Moving up, we've got former champion Alexa Grasso taking on Natalia Silva at 125 pounds. Man, I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a really close fight. And we've talked about this a little bit before the podcast started. I think you'd be silly to get greedy and try and take a shot on Grasso by decision. But I do think as her line continues to move up, I think we've got a plus 215 out there. Mm-hmm. I think this is a coin flip fight, man. And for what it's worth, I think Grasso will be the aggressor in this fight. So optics-wise, if this is just pitter-patter shots for 15 minutes, I think there's a pretty good chance that the judges give this to Alexa Grasso. I know the UFC, in theory, would love for Silva to win this, but this is her toughest fight to date. And I don't think that she wins it in huge fashion. I think if she does, I don't really know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but man, I'm super tempted to hit Grasso here at plus 215 in a fight that I think looks really close. You're trusting the judges to pick the winner. And I think that my girl Grasso is going to be moving forward. And optics-wise, I like that.
I texted you at plus 185. Are we going to bet Alexa Grasso this weekend? Man, I'm with you. How in the world is it not a close fight? You beat Grasso by offensively grappling her. That is a known fact. She's willing to throw up submissions off her back, but her get-up game is really not that good. We hadn't really seen Natalia Silva offensively wrestle anybody, and so I don't really think that's a game plan that she's ever implementing. So she's going to go in there and kickbox like she always does. She's versatile, dexterity, she's fast. It's all good, man, but the headshots are going to be coming from Grosso's boxing. It's going to be a lot of kicks versus the power shots of Grosso coming back on the feet. And truth be told, I don't know. We've seen Grasso put together the game plan to catch a spinning kick from Val and take the back. There's a lot of kicks that are going to be able to capitalize and Grasso potentially land some offensive grappling here. I remember when Teresa Beletta had 5 or 6 minutes of control time in the first round over Natalia Silva before catching that spinning back kick. I absolutely think that Grasso could land takedowns here. Yeah, man. At the end of the day, this fight is going to be competitive, and whether it's a half unit or a full unit, I'm going to find myself on Alexa Grasso. I almost have to.
I think people are just really down on her because of her last performance against Valentina Shevchenko, but we're talking about the champ. The champ had 3 fights to really figure her out, and she put together a great performance. I don't think it's a knock on Alexa Grasso. I think it's just a wake-up call that Valentina Shevchenko is a long-standing champ for a reason, and the line being this overcorrected seems a little ridiculous.
I'm with you, man. Recency bias built all into that one. Moving on up, men's bantamweight, Jose Aldo taking on Ayman Zahabi. Dude, this honestly might be the most boring fight on the card. Probably an absolute stinker. I think it goes to decision probably 80% of the time. If anybody's getting to the finish, it's probably Aldo. I think he does carry a lot more power. I think he's more committed to the head strikes. I think he is a little bit faster to the punch as well. But Zahabi defensively is pretty good. Knows how to win minutes, knows how to rack up points. He's in his home country. We've seen people be able to just put a game plan of sticking Aldo on the fence. If you can't take him down, just stick him on the fence and win minutes that way. And so, I don't know, man. In a fight that I think, like I just said, is 80% to go over, and one guy's in his backyard, that's just – I think – I don't know, man. If this was in Vegas, I'd probably slam Aldo at minus 215, but it's a close fight in Canada. And you texted me earlier in the week at any time in 2 point of their careers, if it's going to happen, it's going to be this Saturday. So ultimately, I think I've been talked into completely laying off, but I got to go Aldo, man.
Yeah, it sucks because we're talking about a spot where we both agree that Aldo should be the favorite. We think he probably covers, but there's just some red flags. And as I look closer to it, man, it gets even more difficult to lay off of him. Zahabi, 37 years old himself, he's no spring chicken. And at least this is at 135 pounds. I know Aldo is a little bit of a size advantage. But man, I think he's going to be putting together the better combinations, the better shots to win over the judges when it does reach the decision. And ultimately, I think that we're seeing 15 minutes here. Mm-hmm. It is really tough not to play him. I see that the line's getting bet down a ton on the Zahabi side, and we're getting sub minus 200s. I think both of us could probably be convinced to put something together if Aldo touches the minus 170 range at all. So yeah, just in a fight where I think he's probably got him covered on the ground, he's laying the harder shots on the feet, and just the experience. I think that you have to lean Aldo here. Zahabi, he's never really looked, like a huge favorite in any fight. So sure, he can make this close, but is him making it close enough for us to lay off somebody?
He may win this fight and still look plus 150.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that enough for us to lay off somebody that we see a path to victory pretty clearly in Jose Aldo? I'm not so sure. So I'm hoping that people continue to bet Zahabi, read into the fact that this is in Canada, because I'm itching to play Jose Aldo. It's just really tough to get on it at this point in his career. Moving up to the co-main event in the flyweight division, we have Valentina Shevchenko taking on Manon Fiorot. I don't know, man. I think that this is going to be a close fight. Valentina Shevchenko, for what it's worth, I think she has more paths to victory. If this stays striking, I think we've got a pretty close fight. I think that you have to lean Ferro just because that is her one path. And Valentina, she's moved forward in her career, has really had to depend on wrestling, full mixed martial arts game plan. Manon has been able to withstand the takedown pressure of Aaron Blanchfield, and I thought it looked pretty good. But in the sequences where Blanchfield was shooting for those takedowns, there were times where Manon didn't look great defensively. She opened up her head because she was so worried about the takedown. And I think if Valentina is just able to mix in those shots over the course of 5 rounds, she could really get into Manon's head and start to expose her, because she does have the highest level of kickboxing. And, I feel like if she could just mix in a bit of MMA, maybe not even get the takedown, but just get Manon thinking about it, she could certainly look like the champion that we've always seen. She put on a great performance in her last time out. And I think people are just really eager to fade her because she is kind of getting to that, 37 years old. We haven't really seen her against anybody in the past 2-3 years. But Manon has been a finished product since she got into the UFC. She's 35 years old herself and still lacking in a lot of areas in her game. And I think that Valentina can put together a game plan to expose those holes. And so I do lean her. If I'm saying all this, I probably should be hitting her at plus money. But it's tough. It's tough for me to do that, man. I do lean Shevchenko here, though. Looks like the line's coming down, but plus 118 is tempting. There's just a ton of close fights that I don't really want to commit to betting the dog in. So Shevchenko's the play. Plus 118, it might wind up on my card, but I'm picking Shevchenko here.
When it was plus 110, I almost bet Manon Ferro. When it was minus 120, I almost bet Manon Ferro. And then I checked back literally the next day, and it was minus 144. And then it was minus 155 later that same day. And I was like, okay, I think it's going to get to a point where I'm forced to pull the trigger on Shevchenko. And then now we've seen, the buyback on her. And so I'm kind of in a tricky spot on if I'm going to get involved or not, because you touched on it. I do think Shevchenko has relied a lot on her grappling late in her career. And if she's going to win this one here, I do think she's going to have to mix in some of the wrestling and some of the takedowns, because Manon is extremely physical, man. And I do think can probably match Shevchenko, from what power she has, maybe negating some of the volume that Shevchenko has. But when people talk about Shevchenko declining, it's Jennifer Maia taking her down and taking a round off of her. It's Talia Santos taking her down and taking rounds off of her. It's Alexa Grasso. I love Alexa Grasso. I know you do, man. But it's like she capitalizes on a moment in a fight that she's clearly down to win the belt, and then it's a wishy-washy 10-8 in their second fight to get her a draw because of the grappling. And so when we see Shevchenko beaten, it's girls going out there and offensively grappling her and putting her on her back, and I don't think Ferro's going to do that. And so if Val has all the takedown upside, and it's maybe Ferro's minus 120 on the feet over 5 rounds, I was really hoping it was going to continue, and I was going to get Shevchenko at like plus 150, because I was going to get involved. A champ at plus money, a champ with 8 rubies on her belt at plus money. It was something that I did feel like I was going to get involved in, but at plus 118, I don't know if it's enough, man. And so it's a line I'm monitoring. I know we've seen a ton of line movement on fight day this year, and so maybe it does get to a point where I find myself on Shevchenko. And, I'll side with the underdog like yourself and pick Shevchenko in the co-main. Main event, Belal Muhammad versus Della Maddalena. We might disagree here from what you responded to my text message, but I bet JDM at plus 180. Dude's down to like plus 150 and maybe even and lower in some spots. So I do have quite a bit of closing line value. I think this is a very high-level fight. I think there's clear advantages on the feet for Jack Della Maddalena. Jack shows me that he is willing to go to the brink of death to win fights. He doesn't care if he's down 2 rounds. He's going to Gumby roll out of a takedown and throw a knee. Like, the dude's going to fight for my money. And he doesn't take the back foot like Leon, man. You know, me and I both bet Belal at plus 200 against Leon. Leon accepts the back foot. Leon's a kicker. And it was kind of like, dude, Belal had Leon on his back 20 seconds into a championship fight. That's not going to be the case with Jack, man. And anytime Jack is on the feet, he's not going to be on the back foot. He's going to be on the front foot. He's going to be putting jabs out there. He's going to be touching the body of Belal. I think Belal is an elite fighter when it comes to his mentality, his game planning, his fight IQ. But skill-wise, if he doesn't go out here and land takedowns and control Jack for vast majority of these rounds, any time spent on the feet, he's going to be taking damage. And for him to go to a 2-1 dog now to a 2-1 favorite, the UFC is throwing this guy up in Canada. The UFC doesn't like Belal, man. I truly think that they haven't booked the Islam Topuria fight yet because they're kind of hoping that Maddalena wins and Islam can just move up and do what he wants to do, man. I don't think the UFC really cares about Belal Muhammad, and I don't know, man. I think JDM might actually go out here and put him away with strikes on the feet. So JDM plus 180. I dig it, man. That dude's going to fight for my dollar.
I think that this is a spot where people are just eager to fade Belal Muhammad, man. I am not the biggest Belal Muhammad fan by any means, but I think that this is a tailor-made matchup for him. You know, Gilbert up 2 rounds. I mean, and I'm with you, you know, Jack Della is somebody who will fight for your money, but he did get taken down by Gilbert Burns 7 different times. And I think Belal Muhammad has the gas tank to continue that pace over the course of 5 rounds. When we talk about when Belal fought Gilbert in his fight, he 50-45'd him. You know, he put on a full clinic. He wasn't dropping rounds to somebody like that. He showcased that he was just an all-around better fighter than Gilbert Burns. I think he's at a better spot in his career than Gilbert Burns. And I think that Jack Della has escaped the clinch of death multiple times at this point. I have never had much faith in him. And I think he was gifted this opportunity because outside of him stepping in on short notice and getting this opportunity with a dropout of another fighter, he'd never make it to this spot. So I really am, you know, rooting for Belal here. I've sold Jack Della Maddalena cards to people who are really high on him. He is just not a fighter I believe in. I think he's somewhat one-dimensional. And I will agree that, you know, his boxing is world-class. I love the way he mixes in the body work. And I just don't know if Belal's going to be the guy that he can showcase that against. I think people love to count out Belal. I was kind of upset that, you know, he is such a big favorite here. I say such a big favorite, even in the minus 180s, because I was wanting to hit him hard for, like, you know, in the minus 130 range. I'd hit him really hard. But at this point, I think I might just hit him, you know, 1.5 units straight. I'd love for the Della Maddalena line to continue to come down. So, you know, I think that this is a spot where Belal is going to show you. He's going to finally get on the mic, probably make you cringe, but tell you will remember his name after this performance. So I am on the Belal Muhammad side. Before we end, I did want to add one thing. Shevchenko by decision is plus 220.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent spot, man. I think that's how she beats Manon Fiorot. Yeah, we haven't seen Manon lose in the UFC. She's never been finished. I don't think that Val's going to finish her, and plus 220 looks a whole lot better than plus 118. So, yeah.
I dig it, man. I told you that was a line I was looking at, talking to somebody about work as well. So, Val plus 220 decision. Yeah, I dig that, man. All 12 fights going down. Montreal, Quebec, Canada. 2 title fights up for grabs. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Twitter, Bet MMA. Keep an eye out. Bets are going to be released the rest of this week. We'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.